Asia, welcome. Thank you so much for taking your time. You know, we greatly appreciate it with all your experiences and, you know, things that you accomplished while you were here since you've left St. Joe's. So we just really appreciate you being so generous with your time.
Yeah,
Start with that,
I'm happy
of
to be here.
course. So this is a question we ask our students to think about and practice a lot. I know you all had the networking session, right, last week. So I'm going to start off with, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Asia, as you see on the screen. I was a St. Joe's graduate, class of 2022. During my time at St. Joe's, I was doing a lot of things. My main thing was being the Hawk. That probably was the most time consuming. I did that for 3 years with the women's basketball team. I was also an RA. My senior year, I became a head RA. I was a writing center tutor. In my earlier years, I was on the e-board for Asian Student Association. I was in University Student Senate, and by my senior year, I really found my niche and the things that I really love to do. Probably like beginning of my senior year, I knew that I wanted to do a year of service, so that's what I did for my first year post-college, and now I'm at Heights Philadelphia as a grants coordinator. Some things I like to do in my free time: hang out with my friends. I like to cook and meal prep. I like to go to the gym. But yeah, maintaining work-life balance is, really important to me, and it should be important to all of you too. And you'll learn that along the way.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Well, you took a little bit away from my first question, but that's okay. Which is, tell us about your first job after graduation. I know it was a year of service, but could you describe sort of how you got to that point? What was appealing? And also, is that like a year of experience? Was it all contribution? Did you get anything back? Kind of just walk us through that process.
Yeah, so I know that I was a very high achieving student in college, not only my academics, but in all of my extracurriculars. And I knew that I deserved a break. I deserved time to really find myself outside of these academic capacities, outside of higher ed. Even though I kind of stayed in higher ed for my year of service, being at an educational nonprofit. But that decision making, just discerning how I wanted my year to go. It was like, I wanted a secular one versus a religious one. I wanted one that was in Philadelphia. I didn't want to go very far, because we know that staying local to, being in service to your community is more important than, flying somewhere that you don't know. This is a community that I've learned to know over the past 4 years. And I also wanted to be at a service site that I knew was well-funded, that had a lot of staff, that I wouldn't feel short-sighted in the support that I would be able to receive during my year. And I also kind of, because I was in higher ed for so long, like I just kind of grew an affinity to that. And so, as I'm looking around, I really liked Philadelphia Futures, which at the time was what our nonprofit was called. We recently merged with Stepping Stone Scholars, which is why we're called Heights Philadelphia. But Philadelphia Futures at the time, they were really into individualized one-on-one advising from the beginning of high school towards the end of college. And I was like, that's great. Like, and our focus is low income Black and Brown students who are first gen. And that is the same target population that we have kept with this new organization. And that was just something that was really important to me and my values, and thinking about my journey to college and how I wanted to support others in that process. And it was a pretty easy decision between the organization and I. Like, we were each other's number one choice, which I'm very blessed with. And then during my year, I started out doing like academic like admissions work within the space. Like, how do we support our high schoolers into getting into college? And now we're also doing careers. I forgot that part. And then I kind of spoke up and I was like, hey, I really like fundraising. I learned that in a very short summer stint with Kensington Soccer Club after college. And I was like, I kind of want to do grants. And so I talked with the VP of advancement, and she also agreed, like, we do need people for grants. And it was just a really good match. And after probably like 3/4 of the way into my year of service, I was like, hey, like, I'm kind of flirting with the thought of what if I was able to stay at Heights after my year. And they were basically like, this is great. Like, what made you change your mind? I know that like you wanted to maybe go back to St. Joe's. And I was like, well, blah, 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 whatever reasons. And luckily I got to stay, and I'm in a great organization, which I absolutely love. And I know that I'm very privileged to be in a space like this where I can be my authentic self and can show up to work every day doing what I love.
Wow, great story. I just want to highlight, maybe for the students, just a couple things the way you described it, which is you went to the VP of development and said, hey, I'm thinking about this. If you're just sitting there doing a wonderful job at what you're doing and expecting the world to say, look at Asia, look what she's doing, she must want to do, like, people aren't mind readers, right? I love that you took the initiative, to go up and say, this is what I'm thinking. They could have just as easily said, you know what, we don't have a full-time role for you, we can't afford whatever. But anybody who demonstrates that kind of initiative and commitment, they're going to say, but I know someone, right? I know someone in another nonprofit, or I came from here, and they're going to support you in whatever way, you need, because you've expressed that interest. So that goes back to the networking session, everybody, from last week. And it's not, I think people have a different idea of what networking should be, or, filling that, but really it's just good communication skills. So good for you. It's exciting. So I'm just curious if we could just go back a little on the year of service. Was there any compensation? Was there like a stipend? And how were your loans impacted at all? Like, did they take something off your, just so people can understand?
Yeah, no, I definitely understand. I think a lot of people get a little shocked when they hear your volunteer service. Like, what does that mean as far as compensation? You do get a stipend, and I will say it's a much easier position to decide like if this is the right fit for me or not, based on what your financial circumstances are. So like for me, the big thing was because I was the Hawk, and because I played soccer, like I didn't come out of college with student loans, which I'm very grateful for. So that definitely played a part, but some things that can go into it that can reduce that shock, if you do have loans and you really want to pursue this, is if you have federal loans, you can get a forbearance if you're with AmeriCorps, in the like AmeriCorps sphere, which is what mine was under. I think there's other, like, you can use SNAP benefits as well, like we qualified for that. For my overall year now, I think it's gone up since I ended my part of the program, but during my time it was 17,000 for the whole year. Ways I was able to make that work, like I did not eat out like at all, and I also, like, I had a roommate, so that brought down like cost of living for housing a bit, and it was tough, even though I didn't have student loans, but it was doable. And I think if you have the diligence and the discipline to make it happen, like there's so many other ways in which the year can be worthwhile. Like I wasn't necessarily confined to a 40-hour work week because Heights didn't really care like that for my this year. But that's also like not every service site is like that, right? But I did get to travel. I got to, relax on days that I wanted to relax. It was just a really good, stepping stone into my career. And going back to what we were kind of talking about earlier, what you brought up, Lisa, like, it did jumpstart my career. Like, it absolutely gave me a productive year to build my skills and find out what I'm passionate about, find out more about myself, and just kind of, go into my career from there. It was absolutely one of the best decisions I could have made in my life.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. I feel like you know what the next questions are because you lead right into them. So thank you. So that I was going to ask about the skills sort of that you developed during that year, or even that you developed as an undergrad, and then maybe honed a little more specifically in that year of service that led you to your current role. And sorry, your current title is
Grants coordinator.
Grants coordinator. Okay.
Yeah, so I guess I'll go over what grants are first and then back up from there. I think that would be easiest. Basically, as grants coordinator, I'm in charge of like coordinating and managing everything with the grants process. And if you don't know what grants are, it's money that you receive from like foundations or corporations to keep your nonprofit, well resourced, and you're able to compensate your staff, put on programming, things like that. So more background about it. We have about a $12.7 million budget, and about 40 to 50% of it, I'd say, comes from grants. So
Wow.
I do hold a lot of responsibility in many ways, less so about, talking to the foundations, and more so like, hey, we have to make sure we get this grant deadline in on time. We can't miss it, or else we lose out on what, $50,000, which those things make a difference in that adding up to $12.7 million. So anyways, backing up. As far as skills that I think are really good for this role specifically, and that I learned during St. Joe's and in my year of service, and building it along the way, like teamwork and collaboration are huge in this grants process, because it's not just me. Like, it can't just be me, it has to be my supervisor. It's also the finance team. When these foundations ask for budgets, like, we have to get them involved. If it's about a program that I don't have a lot of knowledge about, I have to reach out to programming and be like, hey, can you write up this, project description for what you want? So there's a lot of moving parts. You have to make sure that you get your communications out on time, so we're not scrambling before the deadline. I'd also say, just general leadership skills, like knowing when to initiate, taking care of something, knowing whenever it's kind of not your place, knowing whenever you need support. And some other skills that I really value is being reliable. I don't know if that's like necessarily a tangible, transferable skill, but holding myself to accountability so that my management and my supervisors don't have to worry that I'm going to miss something or I'm not going to do something on time. Like, really staying on top of my game. Communication, always super important. I know everybody says that, but like making sure that you're clear and that you're talking like, hey, I want this done by this certain time, or I would appreciate if you got this back to me by Thursday. Like, those things matter because you don't want something dragging out for a long time. And yeah, I mean, just overall being responsible. I think that's what really gets you so far, being a reliable employee and really being passionate about what you do is another skill.
Yeah, great. No, all good suggestions. And I was going to comment on one of them and I lost it now. You said reliable, kind of work ethic.
Yeah.
It will come back to me. Oh, I was going to say, can you tie those back to any of your St. Joe's experiences? Like, where they came from is one question. And also, students ask me a lot, kind of like you said, not knowing your place. Should I say this or that? Like, what's your feeling on like raising your hand for help, however that looks in your scenario? So kind of two questions.
Yeah. Great question, that second one. So the first one, I'll say, just between all the things I was doing, like my senior year, it was being the Hawk, being a head RA, being a tutor, and still, finishing college. What was it? Magna cum laude. So like the second honors level down. Like, all these things were extremely important to me. I had to make sure that, I had to make sure that I was prioritizing correctly, giving my undivided attention to the things that needed attention. And yeah, that all goes into this part of work of like, you got to stay on top of your game. You got to know what to prioritize. I think that answered your question.
Yes, definitely.
And then the second question, I forget what it is. Sorry, I'm like,
about knowing, a lot of students will hesitate during internships and their full-time roles to be like, I didn't want to bother anybody. I didn't want to seem like I didn't know what I was doing, so I didn't ask. And I'm always encouraging them, like, if you don't raise your hand, if you don't approach your supervisor and say, I'm interested in this role, how do they know? So if you could just say, how do you decide?
Yeah, so for me, as far as like being reliable, I'm also solution oriented. So like if I'm trying to figure out something, I'm gonna do everything in my power to figure it out first before I go to my supervisor or the VP, because like I know that they are doing much big picture things for this organization than I am, and I don't want to take up too much of their time. But you're gonna run across things that you can't figure out. And much of the time, whenever I can't figure it out and I do raise my hand, they can't figure it out either. So it's like that's like I hate to say it, but that's like kind of my favorite part. It's like, oh, I, as like the small coordinator of this organization, couldn't figure it out, neither could my supervisor. So clearly it's like something in here needs to be fixed. But also like if I don't know something, my supervisor knows that's okay. Like she knows that I'm young, and along with this, it's like any organization that puts you down for wanting to learn more or for wanting to advance your career and just build your professional skills is not the place for you.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you. I usually say the same thing, about interviews. Like if you go in the interview and you're not getting a good vibe, then that's probably a note to self. You want to be someplace where they value what you offer and you appreciate, mutual two-way street. So thank you very much. Let's see, could you comment on, I mean, you touched on this a little bit in your intro, but how Heights Philadelphia, demonstrates a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It seems like that's a principle they're built on, but sometimes it's in the bylaws or it's in the mission, but how do you see that play out like on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so like you said, like I think although like the beginnings of our organization were founded by, white founders, and along the way there have been white executives like at the presidential level. I think that the framework and the care of caring for Black and brown, low income, first gen to college Philadelphians it kind of sets up the rest of the organization, right? Like we have to be an organization that reflects these populations that we serve. So over 50%, so we have about 77-ish employees here at Heights, and we're growing. And also that's a big nonprofit number, by the way. A lot of nonprofits do not have that many. So we can get into that later. But as far as having 77 employees, like over half of us identify as people of color in one way or another, 44% specifically identify as Black or African American, and I want to say 15% of us at Heights identify as Hispanic. I know all this because I write with grants and some other things that we really prioritize is, we do very regular equity reviews of our compensation to make sure across the board, racial and gender lines, like it's equitable and that nobody's being paid more because they're white per se. Some other things that we do, I think our benefits are very inclusive in that they're definitely top of the line for being in nonprofits. Both mothers and fathers in this organization, when they have a child, they qualify for parental leave. And a lot of other places you're seeing just mothers. And we at Heights very much prioritize family and being there for our family. So that's why it's we give a hand also for fathers. Another thing is we give floating religious holidays for those who do not identify within the Christian-centric holidays that are usually celebrated in America. And yeah, I think just, Heights wouldn't be what it is if I'll put it this way. I can never see Heights being majority white organization. I think if it was that, it would be really weird for, the population that we're serving. Like it wouldn't make sense. And also like, we do want to hire staff that reflect the population that we serve. Like it doesn't work otherwise.
Right. No, that was great. Thank you so much. And, just knowing that there are, as you said, the benefits, the parental leave, that floating holidays, that just tells me that the organization you work for in this case is acknowledging those differences and willing to put it into practice as to, oh yeah, you can take off whatever day you want. Says a whole different message than we have floating holidays, right? It's much more direct and specific. So. Awesome. So I'm nearing the end. I have one or two more, and then I'm going to look at the students' questions and hopefully draw a few of those. Is there anything you feel like you wish you would have known as an undergrad? I'm going to stop there. No, you know, specifically regarding a career in nonprofits, is there anything you can share to be like, okay, everybody, look out for this, because this was a big surprise to me, or not? It's okay if it's not.
I'd say in general, nonprofits are not. I didn't realize how much taxes would take out of my paycheck. Like, you can see the estimates online. It's not that, it's lower. And like, just that's all. It's out of my control. And the cost of living is out of my control, but it's livable, the wage that I make. And it's only going to grow from here, right? Like, I'm a young professional. I'll grow from here. Other than that, being in my field, I'd say, alluding back to what I was talking about earlier, just be very, and sometimes you don't have a choice if you want to be in nonprofits. Like, I very much knew coming out of college, but not every nonprofit is created equal. You're going to have some that financially struggle, like they are choosing which bill per week to pay. And I was talking with our director of finance, like he was like, yeah, the other nonprofits I was at, like it was a choice each week, like which bill can we pay? Who do I have to reach out to be like, hey, we have to skip this payment, or we have to delay this payment. But he says here, like, he never ever has to do that. And so it just shows like how much of a good financial place Heights is in. And yeah, just be very cautious of that if you want to be in nonprofits. And some nonprofits like only have 3 employees or 4 employees. Like, if that's what you want, sure, but know that if their services are scaled more than they can bear, you're gonna be working like you're constantly gonna feel like something's not going right, or something could be going better. You might have to feel like you have to work more hours than you have to. Like, here, I feel like I can start at 9, end at 5, and most days other than busy grant deadline periods. But like, I'm gonna go home at 5 and be totally fine. Other nonprofits, you don't always get that.
Great. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So I think this is a great question, and I was going to ask you this in a different way. So Ryan, are you here?
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for asking this one. So this question comes from Ryan. How do you pronounce your last name, Ryan?
Easter.
Heaster.
Easter, yeah.
Heaster. And he acknowledges the multiple activities and commitments you had while you're a student here. And he said, what strategies did you use to manage / balance your time, which I thought of during your description, during your junior and senior year at St. Joe's, so you weren't overwhelmed with those responsibilities?
That's a really great question, and I'm surprised I didn't cover it in my initial talking about.
That's okay. We have Ryan here, and he addressed it for you.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking that. I think what it ultimately came down to was, oh my God, I used to have like an acronym that I would say all the time to people on how to discern your boundaries and like what you choose to do with your life, and I'm forgetting it. But the 3 ultimates that it came down to, as I reflect, is this something that I'm passionate about? Am I being fulfilled? That is always number 1. And then number 2 is, do I have the time for this? And number 3 is this going to advance my career in a way that is valuable? That's pretty much what it always came down to.
So what if you answered yes, but we all have 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
How did you manage to successfully execute on those? Did you have any strategies, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that those 3 things, I mean, I guess it probably makes more sense in my brain. But like,
oh, we're sorry. No, that's us. That's
no,
it.
it's
I forgot
everybody.
to mention that at 2:20, there's like an emergency test. Did you
Yeah.
all get that notification earlier? No, it's just a test. I know I sound like the radio. It's just a test of the emergency broadcast system. No.
Okay.
So
Anyways,
there goes everybody's phone. Lovely. I'm gonna try and turn down the volume so that I think that's good. Okay, can you hear me, Asia?
Yeah.
Okay, I turned it down. I think I will have to splice that part of the recording.
That's okay.
I'm sorry, I meant to mention that earlier, but
Yeah, as far as strategies, like discerning came easy with those 3 points in mind. And I see all of the things that I did, especially my senior year at St. Joe's, coming into play today. Like being the hawk, that's like time management through the roof. Like you're constantly on flights, you're constantly on buses. Like you have to make time for these games. You have to make sure that your homework's done before you go on a flight because you get flight sick. Like like all of those things go into it, right? In the time management. And then like the writing and being a writing center tutor, like I write for grants now.
okay,
And like being an RA, just learning how to manage your administrative tasks, all of that goes into it. So and it also, I think maybe this is part of the strategy part that you're alluding to, that I think something that I mention a lot to my peers today and, you know, older adults, is like a lot of people in our age group, those who are in the classroom, like we don't know ourselves and we don't take a lot of time to reflect and really get to the deep part of ourselves to know what we want and what we're passionate about. And that is the piece that will take you further than others once you understand that part of yourself.
yeah, that's great. We had a couple individual appointments today that we talked about that a lot. Because I think up until this point in your life, when you're a college student, you know, it's step 1, step 2, step 3, get to high school, get to college next. And then
Yes.
everyone just assumes like at the end of college, there's like a big black space, you know, nobody really knows what that looks like, but it is, you know, up to each of us to define it, discern it,
Yes.
map it out. And if you don't know yourself, you're literally operating blind.
Yes. And it's like, for me, I'm a very big planner. Like I've been planning for my career, like in this discernment process of like, what should I prioritize in college? What should I care about? Like that was all me planning for where I am now and where I'll be in 5 years. Like if you don't know how to plan, that's another thing. Like you're gonna feel lost. You're gonna feel internally lost. Like your nervous system is gonna tell that to your body. You're gonna just always feel like you never know what's next, or you're gonna feel anxious. And just, you know, taking that healing time and that deep work time to know what you want and what you care about will help you feel more regulated in this life that is not always, you know, lucky. It's not always gonna go your way.
Right. No, well said. Thank you. And I think you did touch on what I was getting at, like those strategy, time management, you know, basic, but if you're on flights and buses and you can't be doing something else during that time.
Yes,
I mean, you can try to do homework on the road, but if you already know that's not you, you have to look ahead and say, this needs to be done ahead of time, you know, that kind of
And I
thing.
also think another aspect of the time management thing, it's also discipline. Like you gotta know how to stay disciplined and to do what you need to do. And sometimes, especially my senior year with my senior thesis with sociology, it was, I have to wake up at 5 a.m. to get this done. It's unfortunate, but if I loved my senior thesis, I loved all the other things that I was doing. If I wanted to keep doing it, you have to make that sacrifice. And it didn't mean that you didn't have to get 8 hours of sleep. It just meant you had to go to sleep at 9. Like,
Right.
like you're gonna have the least amount of distractions between the 5 hours of 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. Do what you need to do in that time period to make the rest of your life go as smoothly as possible.
Right. Well, that kind of, again, leads into the next question. Like, Ryan also was curious about, he says, were you able to have the social life you wanted? You know, outside of all that, and especially with that early morning commitment, like a lot of social things happen at 9 p.m. You know, so did you feel like you missed out on a lot, or were you able to kind of work around that?
Yeah, I mean, naturally, I'm not really a partier. I'm not really a big crowds person. So that type of social aspect of college, I didn't really, I felt indifferent towards it. And I didn't want to be around it anyways. I was very much like, hey, let me catch up with my one friend or a group of friends in a small, quiet setting. Maybe like it's a few of us, you know, in somebody's apartment, we're just hanging out, right? And no, I did get that very often. I mean, it wandered away because of the pandemic. Like that was a weird part of my college career.
Oh, just that.
Yeah, like, but otherwise, no. And it's like the things that I was doing, like the women's basketball girls, they're like my best friends. And so I naturally got that like on the buses and in the flights and the laughter. So and also like, it's not a sacrifice if you're doing what you love. Like I never felt like I was missing out on anything. And if anything, it was distracting me or, giving me time away from things that weren't good for me, such as spending all my money on stuff that I shouldn't be spending my money on. Like, oops, I can't go shopping. You know why? Because I have a meeting. Oh, well.
Right. It's not that important anyway, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you. We have a couple other questions submitted by students. I thought this was a good question because you also kind of alluded to this from Skylar. Thank you. She wanted to know, what did you want to do before you came to college? Like, did you have a lot of students come in saying, I want to be a police doctor, whatever, did that change? And if so, how did it morph into what you're doing today?
That's a great question. I'd say going into college, I knew that I wanted to study sociology, and that remained my whole 4 years. So I was right on that big picture piece of I want to study things that move the world forward and change the world. And, I knew that in my professional career, I wanted to make a difference somehow, right? I didn't know in what capacity. I didn't know if it was going to be in community organizing or activism or, politics or whatever. And I'd say in high school, I was very much more of a frontliner, and now I'm very much a back end person. So like, yes, I love the mission of our organization. I love that, we are setting up our students for economic mobility in college and career access and success. But I knew I didn't want to be in direct service. I wanted to be in the back end, building these resources to make it happen. So in a way, it did change the facing of the work changed, but not the mission and value of the change that I wanted to make in my professional career for the world.
Nice. Yeah, it seems like it evolved. The more information that you got, it's like, wait, this aligns more with me and what I want my mission to be.
Yes.
Another thing she asked that I thought was very relevant for the sociology majors in the room, if anything, or can you identify what was the most important thing you learned sort of through your sociology classes? I mean, you referenced your I forgot if you called it a capstone or your, research project, but, something that really contributed to your future.
Yeah, so, I grew up in a comfortable financial circumstance, like middle class, maybe upper middle class, I'm not sure. But what I did know always is that people who are low income, socioeconomically disadvantaged, did not have the same privileges as me. I didn't know that it went as deep as how it shows up in your body, in your scarcity, in your mindset, like all these things having to do with the physiology of things. I also didn't connect it to the long-term outcomes of like how it affects your health, how it affects, are you able to retire or not? Are you able to just so many things. Poverty is the baseline for, in my argument, from the things I learned in sociology, like I take a very much like a Karl Marx view of it. Like poverty is the base. Everything else is an issue because poverty exists. And in this sociology work, like I realized I like proactive approaches to solving social issues. I don't like reactive ones. And where Heights is very proactive is we are, intervening, if you must say, or we are being of service to our students in middle school and high school to set them up for the rest of their lives. If we didn't intervene as early as we did, who knows, or at all, like who knows where our students would be based on what we know about the history of Philadelphians. especially Black and brown Philadelphians who are disproportionately affected by poverty and don't have as much access to college and career opportunities. So because I, liked proactive work, that's why I chose Heights in many ways.
Great. Yeah, thank you. I hope that answers your questions.
Yes, thank you.
We have a couple other questions from Stephen. Hey, how are you? A couple, if anything, like what influenced you, I guess, to choose that year of service? Because there's so many. You sort of touched on that with the locale, also the commitment, their mission, and also, which I think is a great question, what's been your favorite part of your job so far?
The favorite part of my job is, and sorry if I'm missing out on a question within the question, but the favorite part of my job so far is that this is a very staff-centered organization. Like, it's not just like leave the staff to the circus. Like, they genuinely care about us, they care about our development, and they care about our well-being. So like, for example, just set in the benefits themselves, like we have off the same spring break as the school district of Philadelphia. We have off for Christmas. That's already 10 days integrated into our year. And then we have, for somebody like me that's only been here a year, we have 17 off days on top of that we can choose. Yeah, that's a lot, right? And
That's
then
a lot.
we also have 6 sick days. But yeah, I feel very comfortable in knowing like I can take time off, and those benefits are there for us to use, and you don't see this at other nonprofits. We also have really good healthcare benefits, probably top of the line, on par with corporates as well, corporate organizations. And yeah, like I'd say like it's a great place to work. And we had an all staff retreat on Friday, and somebody like stood up at the mic and was like, "This is a great place to work," and like nobody was like, "Boo." I mean, I don't know why they would be, but what am I saying?
You're booed out of the room.
Yeah, exactly. But like, I'm very like, there's just a lot of they care about our professional development. It's very obvious that they do care. I think other places you're going to run across supervisors that don't know how to supervise, or they're micromanaging, but like they prioritize not being that here, and making sure that like it goes so far. Like if I, like for example, a few weeks ago, I had to go pick up my car from the dealership. I didn't have to like write off my hours for that. Like I just went, and I told my supervisor that I was like, I have to go pick up my car. Sorry, I'll be gone for like 2 hours.
Right.
And yeah, it's just, we don't have to clock in, clock out. That's another tedious thing that, a lot of other places have to do. It's just because they trust us. They trust that we're going to get our work done, and that they don't have to oversee every single step of our professional lives to make sure that everything's getting done.
Right. Great. Thank you. I should have asked this question first is it Azana?
Yeah.
Am I saying it right? From Azana. Because it's the yin and yang of that. What were some of the setbacks that you went through, or what was kind of the tough part of landing this job? Was it tough approaching the supervisor? Was there anything that you were like, yeah, that was a bit of a challenge for me? Because I'm just going to say for myself, at my old age, there have been a fair amount of setbacks where you're just like, this is tough. I know what I want, but it's just hard to get there. So have you had any of those, or, can you on that?
I'd say like, honestly, I haven't had a lot of setbacks. I think every like chapter along the way between college to now and my year of service and everything in between, like it was strategically done in my mind to make sure it all went well.
Mm-hmm.
And it also like, there's things that you can't plan for, right? That just did work for me and fell into place. Like, for example, I think they knew that they wanted to keep me. It's just they didn't know if they could. And then somebody ended up leaving, which opened up money for me to stay. Like, those are the things that just kind of fall into your lap that you're just so blessed about.
Yes, 100%.
And another thing is like, I didn't want to go through like a job search process after my year of service, but I also knew like I genuinely really like Heights. So that was something that fell into my lap. perfectly. If anything, I'd say a setback is like not learning to pay your bills, but like it's
Adulting.
expensive out here.
Yeah.
It's expensive. That's all.
Yes. Yes. And that's, you know, just managing your own finances.
Yeah, absolutely. And I consider myself to be very good at managing my finances. But again, it's one of those external things like I can't control, I can control how much I pay for my rent, but I can't control that it's so ridiculous across the board. You know, I can't control that the price of rent is going up, not compared, and my wages aren't.
Right.
And that goes to every American, you know? So you got to take steps to reduce that shock. And for me, it's like, I don't really eat out so that I can make, you know, not make ends meet, because I think I'd be fine otherwise, but it's just like, you got to do what you got to do the things that you like. For me, that's traveling. So I have to reduce how much I eat out to make that happen.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm just going to say, I feel like you, in describing your process, so when you say things fell in your lap, I'm going to say, I don't think so, Asia. I think you planned very carefully. And yes, was there a little bit of, you know, positive happenstance that happened? Yes, but you also positioned yourself in the right place, right, for something like that to occur. Within a company of 77 plus people, you know, there's movement, there's just life that happens.
And
so, you know,
I acknowledge that. I do acknowledge, like, I did a lot to make that happen, but also acknowledging that a lot of it was luck in a way. A lot of it was, you know, just so many factors go into it. It's not just one thing. All you have to do is do your best, and things will go well for you no matter what.
100%. Because if you hadn't done your best and you're like, oh, I kind of have my eye on this other organization, that opportunity would not have not been offered to you because they saw like less than stellar work ethic. You know what I mean? So I think you do your best every day, show up every day, all in, and think good things do happen. You know, maybe not in the time frame that we all want them to, but they do come your way. So my last question, but was also Azana's last question, is kind of about a parting piece of advice. Like, do you have any kind of summary of advice in terms of either finding a job, positioning yourself, I'll say for success, because, you know, we will help Kaylee, we'll go through a whole job search session in terms of resources, tools, and, you know, more the transactional, but do you have any sort of overriding advice for the class?
My like realistic professional overall advice is like, do what you love, period. Like, don't drag yourself through something that you hate waking up for. And I get it, like most people are in corporate. It's not the most mission or, you know, purpose-based work that there is, but like you can still find things that you love in the work that you do. And as far as overarching life advice, I feel like, you know, some people in the room who I've heard names that I know, such as Azana, they've probably heard me say this a billion times in one way or another. Proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. Early to bed and early to rise makes a person healthy, wealthy, and wise. And early is on time is late is unacceptable. Those are like the three things I live by. I jokingly say they're my daily affirmations. They're not, but but like you live by those phrases, things will go well for you.
I have a little sign in my office that says 10 things that require 0 talent.
I have that too. It's at my desk. Oh my God.
It's amazing. You know, being on time, blah, 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 all these things that are really like, you don't have to be any kind of genius, but they will make all the difference.
Yes, absolutely.
Professional and personal life, you know.
Yes, absolutely.
So amazing. Well, Asia, it's been such a pleasure to chat with you. Really great information. And it sounds like you're really making a huge contribution to our community as a whole. So thank you for that. And thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, of course. Please, you know, connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to chat, email me, whatever. I love to, you know, be mentioned.
Can I share your email with everybody?
Yeah, of course. And another thing,
another
thing I'll put in the chat, if you want to learn more about our organization, it's heights.org.
Okay.
It's yeah, just browse it. If you have any questions about the nonprofit world, that's another
And do you
thing.
mind putting your email in there for anybody that would like to reach out? A couple of the students will be reaching out to express our appreciation for your time. So I'll give you that heads up, but also just to have that. So I will put that, okay, I will put that in on the Canvas course too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to follow your career. That's what those of us in the Career Center get the most excited about, is seeing how great you guys are doing. So thank you for sharing your time with us. I appreciate it.
Of course. Have a great day, everybody.
Okay, you too. Take care.